Good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be doing this webinar today. My name is Professor Douglas Bell. I'm head of the School of Education here at the University of Nottingham, Ningbo, China, and I'm also the course director for the MA TESOL program. In this webinar, I'm going to be providing an introduction to TESOL, and I'll talk a little bit about what our MA course here entails and what people can expect if they come onto the program. So basically, my talk is going to be in a number of parts. I'll just start perhaps by defining what we mean by TESOL. I'm sure all of you understand what TESOL is, but it's always nice to start with a few definitions. So what is TESOL? I'll say a little bit about the kind of people who choose TESOL as a career and where a TESOL career might take you. I'll then talk in some detail about what TESOL actually involves. And finally, I'll talk about what our MA is made up of here at UNNC. So a few more specific details about what you can expect from the MA course. So first of all, then, what is TESOL? I think the first point I'd make there, certainly in the 30 plus years of my career, TESOL has developed quite a bit. The umbrella term, ELT, English Language Teaching, traditionally used to be broken down into two subfields, which were TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language, and TESOL, teaching English as a second language. TEFL was typically offered to people in countries like the UK, America. It's where people were studying to become teachers when they'd go off to countries where English was spoken as a foreign language. So for myself, as someone from the UK, I first qualified in TEFL because I'd be teaching English as a foreign language. So the people who would be learning English in that case would say people in Europe or people in Japan or people in China, where the language that they would normally speak in their home countries wouldn't be the same as English. So English would be a foreign language. In contrast to that, we had TESOL back in the day, which was teaching English as a second language. And you saw more of that going on in countries like America, where, as I'm sure you all know, there's a huge population of second language speakers. So for example, on the West Coast, you might have a large Spanish-speaking community, people who would speak Spanish at home, but they would speak English as a second language if they went out into the workplace. So traditionally, English language teaching made this distinction between learners who were learning English as a foreign language or learners who were learning English as a second language. This all changed a few years ago, and we actually stopped using those terms TEFL and TESOL, and this was amalgamated into one sort of grand term, TESOL, which is where we are now. So the term now TESOL, and you also see sometimes TEAL, teaching English as an additional language. TESOL or TEAL covers both TEFL and TESOL. However, we can break down TESOL into a number of different sub-areas. So for example, we have TEGP, teaching English for general purposes, or we have TESP, teaching English for specific purposes. And ESP itself can also be broken down into two broad areas: teaching English for occupational purposes, TEOP, or teaching English for academic purposes, TEAP. So I guess what you see from this slide is that the field of TESOL, for one thing, it's full of acronyms. For another, it's very broad. There's lots of different specialisms. So who goes into TESOL then as a career? Typically speaking, TESOL is a very popular career choice for those that are interested in the English language, not surprisingly. For those interested in foreign languages, if I look at my own background, I started out life as a foreign language student. I did German and Italian, and I got involved in English language teaching on the back of those foreign languages. For people interested in foreign cultures, TESOL is also a very popular career choice. Obviously, language and culture always go together. It's becoming a bit of a cliche, but people interested in TESOL also often come into the field purely because they want to travel. Certainly a lot of my colleagues over the years, if I ask them how they got involved in TESOL, it came about because they wanted to travel, they wanted to see the world, and the TESOL qualification certainly allows you to do that. Teaching, obviously, the T in TESOL stands for teaching, so you have to be interested, I think, in teaching if you want to have a career in TESOL. And we get lots of people who've maybe started their teaching careers in other disciplines or other dimensions of teaching, maybe secondary or primary, and then they've migrated into TESOL later in their career. And the last kind of person I think who goes into TESOL very often are people interested in charity work. So we get lots of people who are interested in working in some of the poorer parts of the world, helping the poorer places, working with charities basically, or with refugees or malnourished children or whatever. So lots of people interested in those kinds of things, very vocational. They also often come into TESOL. Well, what sort of things then does TESOL involve, having explained about the type of people who come into it and how it's constructed? Well, broadly speaking, I think if you have a career in TESOL, it means that you need to develop a repertoire of knowledge and skills in two main areas. Obviously, the first area is the English language. You have to know a bit about that. But you also have to know a bit about teaching and learning, so pedagogy for teaching and then learning. If I just look at the English language, the sorts of things you need to know about if you're going to become a TESOL professional, you need to know about the history of English, how it's developed, how it's continuing to develop. You need to know about how English differs from other languages. You need to know, obviously, about English vocabulary, English grammar, English pronunciation. And you also need to know about English, quote unquote, culture. So English speaking culture. So that could be America, it could be Australia, it could be the UK, it could be New Zealand, it could be Canada. But you need to know a bit about the culture of those English speaking countries as well, and how it might differ from other countries if you're going to go into a career in TESOL. In terms of the pedagogy and learning, to become a TESOL teacher, obviously you have to develop approaches to good teaching. You have to know what teaching involves. You have to know about evaluation and assessment, and you have to know about how to encourage effective learning. So this is probably a good point to start talking about the MA here at UNNC and how our MA matches and maps up with all of those things that I've just mentioned. Basically, the MA is taught across one academic year, one full academic year, so it runs from September through to the following August. It represents 180 academic credits. So if I just take you through the course structure now. In the first semester, which runs from September through to usually January, there's 3 core modules that we ask learners to do. These are required modules, and these are worth 20 credits each. So the first one, the language learner and language teaching. The second one, applied linguistics for TESOL. And the third one, which at the moment happens to be my module, developments in language teaching methodology. And as I say, all of those are compulsory. Students must take those because these are the bedrock of the course, and they represent 60 academic credits. So 1/3 basically. When we move into semester 2, which usually runs after Chinese New Year, so February time through until about June, May, June time, this is when we open up elective modules. And usually we have a broad spread of different elective modules. This year we offered 6 of them. Next year we may offer a few more. It tends to fluctuate every year depending on what we can make available. But we usually have a broad range of elective modules. Students are required to choose 3 of those for 20 credits each. So as I've listed on the slide here, we have TESOL observation and practicum, English for academic and specific purposes, research methods, language learning with digital technologies, teaching language literature, or intercultural communication. And as I say, we may have other ones available too. But basically, students choose 3 of these, and that wins them 60 credits. Having just said these are electives, for teachers who haven't got very much formal teaching experience, we actually make the TESOL observation and practicum module a requirement. And to be honest, even for experienced teachers, I tend to recommend that it's a module they should think about doing because it is a very useful module. We have teaching practice currently at 2 different schools in Ningbo. We have a teaching practice based at a primary school and a teaching practice based at a local high school. So it's a very, very useful module for teachers to take. They get the experience in the classroom, they get someone like myself watching them teach and giving them constructive feedback. So even if you're an experienced teacher, actually, the observation and practical module is a pretty good one to do. Out of those other modules, it largely comes down to personal choice. Some people who come onto the Masters are interested in later getting a job with universities. So for them, the second module there, English for academic and specific purposes, it makes a lot of sense for them to do that, because in that module we talk about careers at university teaching and how you can break into that particular area of TESOL. The third module, elective module there, research methods, that's also a very practical module for students to take because it underpins what they'll later do in their independent research for the dissertation, which I'll talk about in a moment. Some students are very interested in digital media, in computer-aided language learning and teaching. For them, obviously, that fourth module is an obvious choice, enhancing language learning with digital technologies. Again, other students maybe have a strong interest in literature and drama and poetry. We can offer a module there about teaching language and literature in TESOL. And finally, some students maybe have an interest in cross-cultural or intercultural communication. Again, that often forms a core part of a TESOL practitioner's work, so we offer a module there. But basically, in the second semester, students take 3 elective modules, and again to get 60 credits. The final part of the MA to talk about is the dissertation. And this usually kicks off at the end of the second semester, so we're talking about May, June in the second year, and that runs through until the end of August. And that's basically an independent piece of work. You might want to think of it as a big essay. It's a very big essay, 15,000 words. But this is when students choose an area of TESOL that they're particularly interested in doing some research in. And with the help of a supervisor, myself or one of the other team members, they work on answering some particular research questions, and they produce a piece of independent work, which, if it passes, is worth 60 credits. So we have the 60 credits at the beginning, the 3 core modules, the 60 credits from the elective modules, and then the 60 credits of the dissertation. And when we put all of that together, we get 180 credits, and then we have the MA TESOL award. Okay, I've galloped through quite quickly today what the MA TESOL involves here. My contact details are here on the screen. I'm always happy to hear from prospective students or existing students, any students. So if you have any questions after my talk today, by all means, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Maybe one final thought I would leave you with is that the MA TESOL here at UNNC, compared to some of the other MA TESOLs out there, one thing I'm proud of here, I think, is that we try very much to make an explicit link between theory and practice. So our course it's theoretical, but it's also very practical. And I like to think that we make the course such that people who graduate are well prepared to go out into the world of work. And I think pretty much everybody in the last 2 years that I've been working with on the course here, most people have graduated from the course and gone into well-paid employment either in China or they've gone back overseas. So I'm very keen to keep the course with this practical element so that it leads to gainful employment at the end. Okay, thank you very much for listening.